So Ed, this is awesome. You took advantage of grabbing us some boulders and stuff over here, and this is a great selection. You've got some what we would call 6 to 8 inch size stuff. I even see some like 2 to 3 inch size boulders. That would be closer to like a 10 to 12. I love these rocks. You've even got a couple that have some character on them, a little bit flatter type stuff, which we may use for a waterfall. But the key is to have a variety of different size stones. Not just small ones, but some big ones that you've got over here. So these are what we would call specimen rocks. You remember the rocks that we talked about kind of accentuating that curve in the pond? Like I see a big one like this doing that, a big one like this one over here doing that. Maybe then tying in with some of those medium ones, kind of going big, medium, medium, and then small, small, small off of that peninsula. The one thing that we've always talked about with picking out rocks is find a rock you like and then try to build the whole pond out of that type of stone. It doesn't always look good when you mix this type of stone with, let's say, flagstone. It looks weird. Mother Nature would never mix in cut angular flagstone with round granite boulders. It just doesn't happen. Get some of your inspiration from nature, look what's in your area, and then build it out of that. A pond this size is gonna use, what do you think, about 4 tons of stone?
4 to 5 tons.
4 to 5 tons with the waterfall, some extra boulders here and there. To give you guys an idea, a ton of 18 to 24 inch size boulders is like 4 to 6 rocks. A ton of 12 to 18 inch size boulders, which would be more like watermelon size rocks, is somewhere around 8 to 10. A ton of 4 to 6 inch, the rocks that you can toss back and forth, is somewhere around 25 to 30. So we've got a nice mixture here. You don't have to use giant rocks to make this thing look beautiful. Just use a variety of different sizes. Don't build the whole thing out of 6-inch boulders because it'll look like a necklace, that ring of pearls. So Ed, I had a great question. Where would be the best place a homeowner could go source rocks like this?
It's a great question. So I would say nurseries and garden centers are an easy one to start at. And then there's also all different types of rock yards out there. People that specialize in just hardscape materials. So rock, boulders, brick, flagstone, all that stuff that a landscape contractor would use. Now, if you live in the farm country like I do, you could have some neighbors, they got piles of boulders sitting around that they pulled out of old fields. That stuff works great.
One of the most costly parts of every project is going to be the rock and gravel. Next would be the labor. You guys are doing the labor yourself, so the next would be the rocks. If you can find free rocks from Ed's neighbors, go do that. I guess I would start with just Googling stone suppliers in the area and start that way. And then I think that was a great suggestion, using landscape type nurseries and garden centers and see what they use. All right, let's start bringing these things over and we'll get started.
Sounds good.
All right, guys, rocking in the pond. It actually goes pretty quick. It sounds like a lot of stone, 4 to 5 tons of stone, but we're really talking about like maybe 6 full wheelbarrows of rock to 8 full wheelbarrows of rock. If you can picture moving all that stuff back, then hand placing this, that's gonna be the most physical demanding part of the entire project. You can see over here where I've started rocking in. So a couple things I want to talk about with rocking in the pond. The very first thing you're gonna do is start at the bottom of the pond. I don't want to come up here, start rocking in these upper shelves, and then find out that there's not enough slack in my liner down here. Start at the bottom and work that liner down towards you. That's why it's so important to have about a foot left of liner on your outside edge. So as I'm rocking in, if I'm pulling this in a little bit, I'm not gonna bring the liner in below my water level. So start at your bottom and then work up through here. The other thing you wanna do is think about the size rocks you're using. Now in this pond, we took the water level of the pond, or the bottom of the pond, straight down 18 inches off of my patio. That's gonna allow those fish to come right up into this area. But doing that makes it challenging to rock this section in. The easiest way to do it would be come in here with a 20-inch boulder and just put 20-inch boulders right here. It'll actually look a little weird because we'll have these big, big rocks here and then nowhere else in the pond. So we're gonna have to stack these. So when I'm thinking of stacking the rocks, I'm thinking, how is the next rock gonna sit back behind it? I'm also thinking about as how sturdy these things are. So every single rock I put in, I'm gonna turn, twist, flip, rotate it until it feels solid. If I can't get it to feel solid, put this piece off to the side and then try another one, a lot like a jigsaw puzzle. So you can see here, this isn't going anywhere. I'm pushing all over it and it's gonna be nice and sturdy. Then I can come in here with another rock, maybe like this guy, and if you can see this angle here and this angle here, I think I could probably get this V to fit right in there. Again, nice and solid. I'm pushing here, it won't move, and I'm still then gonna come in with some of this little stuff and help lock it into place even better. And I'm just gonna kind of repeat that all the way over through this. Now in these areas, notice where I brought this rock away from the wall a little bit here. Just because we've excavated the pond out in this shape doesn't mean I have to set my boulders exact to my excavation. If I think it's gonna aesthetically look better to bring this rock out this way, go ahead and do it. And then I can take a bucket of gravel, and the gravel we're using is round river rock, never a jagged stone. Fill that void in, creating another flat spot. It's like kind of like a homemade shelf to stack another boulder right in this area here. Find a rock you like, build the whole pond out of that. Treat every rock like it's a jigsaw puzzle piece. Flip it, turn it, twist it, rotate it. If it doesn't fit, get another piece and start rocking at the bottom and then work your way up to the upper edge. So small rock goes on the curves that go out away from the pond, big rocks on the curves that come in towards the pond, helping maintain that shape of the pond that we worked on so much. Other than that, take your time with it. If it takes you a couple days, so be it. Just don't rush through it. All right, Colleen, so I'm gonna have you finish up kind of the bottom area here. Notice as we get up to this shelf here, how I've got these rocks sitting slightly higher than this shelf. Remember, all of our vertical walls are gonna get covered with boulders, and these are what we consider boulders, anything this size or bigger. Every horizontal plane will get covered with gravel. I want these rocks sitting slightly higher than my horizontal area here, keeping that gravel from wanting to migrate down to the bottom. If this sits like this, really low like that, this little area becomes impossible to hide. And so gravel that you put here will slowly just kind of migrate down, eventually exposing that liner, just making it ugly. It's really the only purpose, is just to kind of, one, to protect it from the UV rays from the sun, and two, aesthetically, it'll just look better. So it doesn't have to come up consistently higher. You can have stuff that comes up really high. You can have stuff that comes up this high, which would create like a little island, or just a little bit higher, but 2 to 3 inches higher than each horizontal shelf. Okay. While you work on that, I'll sneak around and start working on the skimmer box over here. Good, so we talked a little earlier about excavating, making sure that there was enough room for boulders to sit on the left and the right side of the skimmer box. So over here, you can definitely see how much I used that space. I got this big rock in here. The other thing we talked about is the rock that's gonna sit on the left and the right side should be just above water level. So I know if this rock is above water level and this rock is above water level, the stone that'll fit across this should sit above water level. If this was lower or this was lower, by the time I took my bridge stone or piece of wood or driftwood or faux stump, whatever you're gonna do, if this is lower, then that stone is gonna sit down lower into the water level, obstructing all of the leaves and windblown debris from going in here. So we set this a little higher, this a little higher, and then we found the perfect bridge rock. I got this to support it, this to support it, and these to support it. I basically created kind of a tripod of rocks to help support this. I'm gonna set this in here. Fits in pretty nice. I wanna keep it a little bit off the skimmer here to compensate for the space I need for my lid. If this sat right up against it, there's no way I'd get that lid to sit down tight. So I pull this off a little. Then I'm gonna have Ed, as I hold this in place, backfill right up to all this. Good. Fold that back. Now we can come in. We've got some soil to play around with here, so I think another nice flat rock, like maybe something like that, to come in here. We've got a little bit more liner to play with here, so we can kind of manipulate this a little bit. And this is, again, why I wanted to have extra liner, so I wasn't restricted to what I could do outside the excavated area here. So we might take this guy, you know, spin it to fit in there like so. It might come down just a little bit, and then we're good. All right, so as Colleen, Ed, and I continue to rock in the pond, we're getting into our upper section. You can see we've got 99% of the lower section rocked in. Now we come to the upper part, and this is the part that's really the focal part of the pond. This is where we really want to try to maintain some of those curves that we put in. So you can see over here behind me how I've got this big rock, and we talked a little earlier in the day about having the big rocks on the curves that go in towards the pond, little rocks on the curves that go away. And just as important as some of these 12 to 18, 18 to 24 inch large boulders are, so are the small ones. This rock would not look nearly as good if I didn't have some small rocks sitting next to it. So if you can picture big boulders sitting here, we would achieve that same necklace look, just as much as we would if this was all little rocks. So again, the importance in mixing up the sizes of your boulders from 12 to 18, 18 to 24, to 4 to 6 inch size ones over here. For myself, I know Ed, I know Colleen, a lot of us at Aquascape, we're way more focused on the shape of the pond than the actual water volume of the pond. We're so into the aesthetics and the way it curves back and forth. And so in here, I don't want to come in with some watermelon size rocks because this will look straight as I fill up the pond. I need something big that comes way out over in here. And then I'm constantly checking my water level. Ed, you were actually just showing Colleen a trick over here about how to check the water level as you're stacking your boulders. And I thought that was just a great thing using that big 4-foot level. So you can see Ed's got the bottom of the level sitting at the bottom of this stone. And if you remember, we said the bottom of this stone is above water level, allowing that wind-blown debris to still move into the skimmer box. So if I know the bottom of this stone is above water level, everything over here, if I put my level on there, the bottom of that level is still above water level. And so as long as I keep the edges of my liner higher than the bottom of that level, we know the integrity of this side of the pond is gonna be stable and we're not gonna have any leaks or low edges where water could escape and get out from the pond. And so we'll continue to do that and move this level around throughout the pond, double checking things. The area over here, if you remember we had the patio, we said we were gonna set the water level 3 inches lower than my patio. So when I bring in rocks like this and like this and like these ones right up next to the patio, I want to make sure that these rocks get at least as high as the patio. I'm not as concerned about them being higher than the water level as I am concerned about them being the same height as the patio, because this area here, if I were to leave this rock like this or not add another rock, there's no way to hide this rubber liner right here. So I want to bring another couple rocks right into here, just a little bit higher than the patio or at least level with the patio, to keep the little bit of gravel that'll sit in here and or plants or ground covers or whatever from rolling back down into the pond. Remember when we talked about oversizing our liner, or not so much oversizing our liner, but shrinking our pond down a little bit so we had extra liner? You can already see how close that liner is to our water level, and we wanted the freedom to kind of slope these rocks back. If we didn't have that extra liner, we couldn't have sloped these rocks back, pull the liner back and carve it out to achieve that. Same thing over here. I was able to actually pull this liner back, dig out a spot for this bigger one to sit in here. So we're constantly manipulating that liner back and forth, so we can carve some of these big ones in on the edge. If you didn't have the extra liner, you just couldn't do that. I want to get a big rock here. I also wanted to show you guys really quick a trick on how to move some of these big rocks if you don't have ball carts, which are tree dollies, things that they use to move giant trees, or dollies that they use to move like refrigerators, really heavy duty wheelbarrows. We could actually use some of our excess fabric over here. So I'm gonna come in here, cut off a chunk of this. We don't need this piece anymore. It's all above, way above our water level. You can see we've got a pretty big rock. That's about an 18-inch size boulder, even pushing 2 feet almost at the widest part. So we put that boulder right in the center of the fabric. Both of us grab an edge, and we effortlessly walk it over. Now we can use this same fabric as a cushion, so I don't need all of this. I can cut off a piece of it, put it right on top of this liner. Now when I roll in a bigger boulder like this one or that one, not only do I have a cushion underneath the liner, I have a cushion on top of the liner, just protecting that liner from any small holes or anything else. The other thing I like to do is make sure as I put a rock in, I get back up on my viewing area and check to see what it looks like. So from here, it looks all right. If I come over here, I feel like that rock should lean forward just a little bit. As I lean it forward, it'll really help accentuate that curve that we were talking about, and then I'll get little rocks back in here. This rock is then angled to go more this way, really helping keep and maintain those curves. As I held this, Ed so sneakily shoved a shim in right underneath. which now holds it in place just like I want it to. Always make sure it's locked in and it can't move. In fact, a lot of times we'll do what we call the walking test through the pond. I should be able to walk on all of these rocks without them moving. If they move, flip them, turn them, twist them, rotate them until they lock into place, or use gravel to help lock them into place that much better. But this is super solid now. Ed and I were just discussing this section here. When I bring these little ones in here, I just want to bring little ones kind of in here. I don't want to cover all of this with little ones, because then this is just going to look like a pile of rocks. So what we'll do is we'll look for a couple little ones here, and feel free to just backfill all of this. I'll just take this fabric and my liner, hold it up here, and then backfill all this in. I don't want to do that yet, not until I get some of these to backfill up too. So we've talked several times about how much we can manipulate the liner, whether it's the edge that Colleen was working on over there, whether it was carving and stuff over here, whether it was backfilling over here. The nicest thing about working with rubber liner is you have the flexibility to do all that kind of stuff. If you were working with like a preformed tub or concrete or something else, you don't have the flexibility, or your creativity just gets limited. Notice as Ed's backfilling, he checked to see the top of this rock right here. He doesn't want to backfill the soil all the way to the very top, because then when I go to put another rock in here, it's going to be like trying to place two eggs on top of each other and it looks weird. What we'd rather see, this rock recessed back behind that one. So Mother Nature never allows this to happen. Won't stack boulders on top of each other, but you'll see this all the time. As boulders kind of eroded or fell down a hillside, they get locked into place back behind the next one. And so again, everything we're doing is trying to replicate what we see in nature. What I want to do here is then either do a little bit of gravel, or I could do like a flat rock kind of backing off of this. All right, quick little tip. So as I'm rocking in the pond, the other thing I always want to check my fabric height. So if I pull this liner back, my fabric has fallen down quite a bit. And that'll happen just as that liner got moved in and out, in and out. We were constantly folding things back to carve things in place. Just make sure this fabric is up into this level before you start rocking in these other areas. Protection is the key. The worst thing you could do would be to put a little hole in here. And this is really just cheap insurance. So make sure this is covering every square inch of that liner back behind everything. Then feel free to come back and rock everything in. Hey guys, this looks great. And this is actually very common, just to come in here and just start adding a bunch of these little softball size rocks. But we've talked about how to just kind of break up that monotony a little bit. And if we have some 12, 10, 18-inch boulders, just to break this up a little bit, will make it look a little bit more man-made. I like when we have like kind of these washes that come in, but this is stacking that stone on top of each other, and Mother Nature won't allow that. I think just like removing some of these and maybe dropping in one of these medium guys will just look a whole lot better. All right, so we're getting in here, we're starting to kind of move up in towards our waterfall. And a couple things happened. These are what we call frame rocks, right? So this is a frame rock, and frame rocks kind of, well, they do exactly what I said. They frame out the waterfall. So think of it as a picture. The key with frame rocks is they need to be to scale with the size of the waterfall. So if you see a 2-foot high waterfall in nature, very often you're gonna see a 2.5 to 3 foot boulder sitting next to it. You'll never see a bunch of little 6-inch cobbles stacked on top of each other and water moving in between those things. So we've got a frame rock here, and then we had another frame rock that we wanted to put over here, but it just wasn't quite tall enough. So what we did is we set up a couple of these smaller rocks on the bottom, then took some of our gravel, made a little gravel bed over here, which got, hopefully, that large rock that Ed and Colleen have just finished rolling all the way from the street, back up over here, up into a height that looks more to scale with the size of our waterfall. The other thing that gravel does is it provides a nice big base for that thing to fall on. So it's kind of like adding that fabric on top of the liners. It creates a huge cushion. The third thing it does is it allows them to kind of manipulate that stone into the angle they want, because that gravel is somewhat flexible. So if they need to get this thing to dip down a little bit more here, they can move this away. If they need this side built up, we can add another little cobble or something. But they're gonna take that guy, roll it in place, roll it down in here, because moving rocks that size and picking them up is almost impossible. So as they bring that rock in here, of course, we're always worried about the integrity of the liner. Not just it caving in, but what the soil conditions on the back are like over here. You can see our fabric only comes up to about here. We've also got some big pieces of gravel. So if you're gonna roll a rock down into the pond, double check your soil back behind it. Make sure there's nothing sharp in there. Pull your liner back. And then again, take another scrap piece of liner and just create a little bib so that thing can slide down into place a little bit better. The worst thing again you could do is put a hole in the liner, and this is just quick and easy and will ensure that you don't have any problems later down the road. So what we're looking for is to maybe create a double drop coming out of this waterfall. Here's the top of our biofalls here. We're gonna get a drop here, and then we wanna get these guys within like maybe 4 inches of each other and create another little drop here. So hopefully a 2-drop waterfall. What Ed was just paying attention to is we can't do that with the way the liner's sitting over here. So they're gonna dig that back out. Again, this is the reason why we shrunk the pond down a little bit compared to the size of the kit. Now we have the flexibility. We're not handcuffed to creativity because the liner's too short. We are allowed to pull that liner back, dig that out, and get that rock to fit in there just right.